Good evening. I'm Fumio Nanjo, a special advisor to Mori Art Museum. ICF today, or this year, is talking about pandemic and innovative city by taking into account the impact of the new COVID-19. And has started from the 16th and it will continue on until the 27th of this month. And today marks the 5th round of art and science session. We have been talking about how COVID-19 has impacted the way we communicate around the world. Focusing on three themes of understand, empathize, and create in collaboration with others. Today we'll be talking about creating in collaboration with others. Cities, architecture, lifestyle, how will these things change going forward or not change going forward? Those are things that we would like to discuss today with our guests. The breakout session, we have asked moderators for each of the sessions, and today, as we did yesterday, we have architect Mr. George Kunihiro of Kokushikan University. One of the panelists who were scheduled to speak today, Mr. Thomas Faple, is unable to come today, and therefore we have asked Mr. Ryosuke Sakaki, who is the representative and founder of OPENMEALS and also art director at DENTSU Corporation. And Ms. Nada Debs and Mr. Yuima Nakazato is joining us today as scheduled. On the right-hand side of your screen, there is a slideshow section which we hope you will fill out to send us comments or questions. We are looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Kunihiro-san, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone, and good morning, and hello. Hello, greetings to everyone in the world. I am very pleased to serve as the moderator for this session. My name is Georgie Kunihiro. Today, we will be holding the second day of the Art and Science breakout session on the topic of collaborative creativity. We are going to take up the food as well as fashion and furniture. So to collaborate together to create is very important. With the pandemic, our lifestyle has been compelled to maintain a social distance. The exchange of people as well as collaborative work that has been taken place by the interaction of people have been impacted significantly. Now, virtual technologies are increasingly used. And in our creative activities, this has had an impact as well. With the pandemic, changes have occurred. And also there are factors that have remained unchanged. And against this backdrop, we will explore what is required in the real space. I believe that the presentations will be full of insight. Without further ado, I would like to introduce the panelists to you. First of all, we have Mr. Yuima Nakazato. He is a fashion designer, founder and director of Yuima Nakazato. And DENTSU art director and design strategist, the OPENMEALS founder, Mr. Ryosuke Sakaki. And from Beirut, we have Ms. Nada Debs, designer. She speaks Japanese as well because she's stayed in Japan, and I'm sure she's listened to Japanese language as well. Without further ado, I'd like to ask Nakazato-san to start his presentation, please.
Hi. Yuima Nakazato is my name. I'm a fashion designer. Today, under the theme of clothing in a new era. This is the clothing part, and I guess clothing is something that almost everybody will be wearing. And clothing, how has clothing been impacted with COVID-19, and what kind of changes are we going to see in the future? So today I want to share with you what I have in mind and what I'm envisioning for the future. And even before COVID-19, we must change. We have to undergo change and the transformation that has been spoken about even before COVID-19. But without going through that transformation, we had been continuing the statu quo. But this big change of COVID-19 has forced us to transform ourselves where we were unable to force change in the past. And so very briefly, I want to take you through what I do as part of my work. An example that I always refer to is for F1 race. Formula One, speed is everything. Using all the technology available in order to be the fastest person on earth. That's Formula One. And what I am competing against is the same. In the world of clothing, I define what is the most beautiful thing on earth, and I would demonstrate that, show that to the rest of the world. And the people who are participating in this are well-known traditional brands with long history, and as a completely new brand, I am challenging myself as to what I can do and offer. There's this overwhelming capital or history. I want to challenge with my own unique perception, and that's how I am competing and challenging against the establishment, so to speak, in this world. Now, going beyond physical distance. Now we are living in a world where we have to ensure a social distance, and I am in the field of creating clothing. Haute couture is my field of expertise, and haute couture is something that you have to is something that is created as a result of close communication and measuring and coming close to the person who has placed orders for that. We have to come close, and despite of the required social distancing. And what I have done is having to deliver haute couture to a person who I've never met before. This is a person that I've never met, so I don't know what this person is expecting. But through online, will I be able to narrow this gap in terms of mental distance? Will I be able to overcome that distance? I have been challenging that through the lockdown and through the pandemic. I have had interviews with the individuals to be able to understand, but measuring and understanding the size of that person has been very difficult. The nude size, it's not the nude size that we want, because that doesn't exactly show how comfortable that clothing will be and make that person feel comfortable wearing that clothing. That sense of the right size for that person is something that I had to bear in mind. Logistics didn't stop. Physical distribution did not stop at first under the pandemic. And so I would ask the person to send me a shirt. And with this shirt, I will be able to gather a lot of information. I would be able to understand what kind of preference that person has in terms of the right sizing. And one question I would ask was, where did you go wearing this shirt? And what kind of memories, fond memories do you have? By asking those questions, I'll be able to visualize the memories that person may have, maybe negative memories or positive, fond memories. or maybe the shirt was a gift from a very important person. So I would hear these episodes and would inspire myself to design certain clothing. And these are the 3 shirts, white shirts. They could become jackets or dresses, and they will eventually change over time. 25 people took part in the project, and at first it was a very simple white shirt, but at the end of the day, I was able to create 25 different shirts as a result of going through the process of listening to the memories. It spent 1 month on this. At the end of the project, it almost made me feel that I got to know that person. It was only a 15-minute dialogue that I was able to have with these individuals, but this was a very interesting project. It was through digital means that I was able to speak to them, but I was able to feel as if I was an acquaintance of them. And these clothes would move, would go on a travel, and come back. Once again, there was a person who told me that it was almost like a trip of mind. And so people trying to find joy out of the pandemic and trying to overcome the physical challenges. That was something that I was able to feel and experience through the project. This could offer a new way of communication in fashion. It was a new attempt, and I thought that it provided me with a lot of inspiration. Another point that I want to talk about is during the stay-home period. Now we are staying more of our times during the at home, and I think many of people were disposing of what they had. And I'm sure those of you who are watching this say yes, but what are the types of clothes that you cannot dispose of? Not because they were in fashion, or maybe because someone said that's a nice dress, but if you can't dispose of a particular clothes, it's because you have a particular memory for that, because it's so important for you. You are unable to let it go. And from my perspective of creating clothes, I would want the person to keep it as long as they can, but it's on the part of the person who wears the clothes to make that final judgment. And from a designer's perspective, creating resilient clothes doesn't guarantee that the person will wear the clothes over many years. How can we narrow that difference? Bring designers come closer to the users. I thought that could provide a hint for us going forward. And thinking about sustainability, it's very important to have that perspective of creating clothes that will be treasured over many years. And what you see on the screen comes from collection in the past. Clothes to be able to be worn over many years, like kimono. What do we need to do? From the time we are born to the time we die, we change every minute. Our body shape may change physically, and the mindset, everything will change. Everything around us, and including ourselves, would change, and that would lead to people letting go of those clothes. But what if there is metabolism on the part of the clothes, and if that clothes would change and metabolize over time, maybe the clothes will be able to live much longer. And this is a lady, and at the end of her life, her clothes will be passed on to her granddaughter, not using needles, not using yarn. I thought that it would produce something completely different. Let me skip this. For 20,000 years, this is something that has not changed. This is a needle from 20,000 years ago made of bones. And the shape is completely the same as the needles that we see today. It's just made of bones, using needles and thread to sew together cloth to create clothing. This has not changed over the years, and it's very difficult to break the clothes apart because it requires a lot of energy. But if the clothes are able to disassemble very easily, maybe it would change the life of clothes. And so I started to think of how I can update this idea. This idea came to me from around 2016. I've tried to make it tangible, the idea tangible. Every 6 months, there's a fashion week, and I have been trying to show how much my idea has been evolving. When I saw this, I thought that this idea is most suitable for a garment. And I am running out of time, so I would like to skip a couple of slides. Kimono, this is boro, which is used clothes, and the surface of space shuttle is actually the same. The idea, the concept is the same. In other words, both of them are very expensive. You had to use them over many years, and the concept that people come to is that why don't we combine them in different units? So kimono is made of wonderful philosophy, and I'm thinking that we should pass this philosophy on to our future generations. We're going to enter an era of diversity. Lifestyle is going to be more diverse, and people will be selecting their own way of lifestyle. What will be the clothes that we'll be wearing in such a time? And sorry for skipping, going very quickly, but you can see that automatically, or actually the cloth is moving almost like a living thing, like an animal. Under a certain condition, the cloth itself will move, it will bulge, it would create shapes. The dress on the left-hand side is made of the cloth that is shown on the right-hand side without cutting. Like kimono, it's create curves that would fit the shape of your body. A close-up of the picture shows the different rectangular shapes, and these rectangular shapes will consist of a lot of information that is information of how I would want the cloth to shape, and I would print it on the cloth like this. This is printing, and it would be rolled up like this, put it into water, dip it into water, and dry it. And eventually, the shape of the cloth has changed, as you can see. And when it is worn, it will look like this. This is a dress. It's not like using thread and needle. It's using water and creating clothes, garment. In the future, looking at the size and color and shape, you would select it, and very quickly, haute couture type of garment could be created at the storefront. That's the kind of concept that I have in mind. At first, the cloth didn't move the way I wanted, but I've repeated an experiment hundreds of times, and finally have been able to create this kind of garment. And this is the artificial protein. It's a new sustainable protein material. It's what I call super contraction. In other words, the cloth moves, and using digital means, the movement of the cloth can be controlled. And this is also something that I wanted to talk about. After the World War II, there was what was called a new look. What will be a new look going forward? And that was something that I wanted to talk about. But if I may tag on to what I was talking about, when we are suppressed, it leads to liberalization. And when we talk about liberalization, it's not about it's more about following your instincts. It's not about being complacent. That's how this new look spread after the World War II. What do we want to liberalize ourselves from? I think that would provide us a lot of inspirations and hints as to how clothes could change going forward.
Thank you very much, Nakazato-san. We were truly immersed listening to your presentation. Now we would like to move on to the second panelist. Mr. Ryosuke Sakaki, Art Director of Open Meals of DENTSU. Sakaki-san, over to you. I hope my PowerPoint presentation is shared. Well then, I would now like to start. I'm an art director at DENTSU, and I've been a proponent of Open Meals. It's about food and technology. I'm a founder of this initiative. I would like to first of all talk about what is Open Meals. This is combining food, technology, and art. Food culture for the future can be established, which is affluent. We have experts in food, technology, and art in promoting this project. It was founded in 2016. We have already completed 7 projects that we have showcased. So far, in 28 countries, and 500 media have reported on our initiatives. More recently, as art, this project has been evaluated highly. Nanjo-san has chosen us to participate in the future and art exhibition, and in China and other regions, we have been promoting Open Meals. Now, today, I would like to talk about the use of data in food, utilizing data to be transmitted globally, even against the backdrop of COVID-19. We believe that there will be high demand for such initiatives. I would like to talk about how we began, and 3 specific projects will be explained. The first one was back in 2015. I had an idea of implementing this. Since I'm an art director, I am always utilizing CMYK on the computer. This stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. All printed media and photographs are comprising CMYK dots. So in this project, we have developed data, and when this data is transmitted globally, the same image can be shared. And I thought that 4 primary tastes could be incorporated, which are sweet, sour, salty, and bitter. Now, in the personal computer or the printer at home, there is edible paper. So I put soy sauce, sugared water, and vinegar and sake instead of ink. So this is an experiment made on edible paper. And obviously, with the different combinations, the taste will change, although it wasn't delicious. I have the PC and printer side by side. And I could have the PC here, and the printer could be over in the United States, and the same taste combination can be transferred. So with that, I have interviewed many people who have been involved in food culture. In this one piece of paper, we can have one taste, but by having a pile of these edible sheets, we could perhaps come up with a meal. And this is and then I thought of utilizing the 3D printer. I talked to experts in this field as well. So through this process, many experts came together from different industries. And we decided to announce to the world and we launched the sushi teleportation in South by Southwest of 2018. I'm going to show you a video now. This is Tokyo sushi that is being made, and data, appearance, nutrition data can be collected, and this data can be provided online by downloading. If it can be repeated by a special printer, the Tokyo sushi can be enjoyed in outer space as well. This is what we announced at South by Southwest 2018 in the form of the sushi teleportation machine. This is what it looks like. We collaborated with DENTSU. It's called Pixel Food Printer. It's not a complete reproduction of food, but with a lower resolution, the pixel are represented by one cube, and by laying them on top of each other, we would be able to teletransport taste. This is the actual output being made. This is prawn. It's about 15 to 20 minutes. But it takes about 5 or 6 hours for a complete meal, so it is not practical yet. But we have been able to realize this. And when we announced this in Austin, the response has been tremendous. And after that, we have more partners willing to work with us and are receiving more inquiries. This is 2018 in fall. The Smart Kitchen Summit that was held in Seattle. This is a major event in the food tech business, and we announced this at this event. When we transport, we cannot have exchange unless we have a standard format like PDF, JPEG, and so we have come up with the ideal format called .cube. It's 3 by 3 centimeters. The cubes will be the common unit and have layers on top of each other, and each layer will have different taste as well as nutrition factors, and the ratio will different, and the structure will also change. By so doing, we felt that we can reproduce various types of food. It would be difficult for everyone to do this on PC, so the Cube creator can provide this online, and the end user can download and print by a special machine for eating. The printer structure as well as the characteristics was developed and announced.
And with knowledge and experience, we have seen an increase in number of partners. And we were talking about an idea of creating a place where people can experience this futuristic type of food. And this is a sushi singularity. We've worked together with a number of partners. First, digitalizing food and connecting to the internet. And if we are able to exchange that information, it would lead to two types of revolution. One is that food will connect people around the world, where food will be sent online and be consumed, and food will also be connected inside the physical body, and the nutrition and genomic data and so forth. This information will be collected, and the most suited food could be provided for that person. So that's the second type of revolution that we can expect. In South by Southwest in 2019, we talked about this nutrition dispenser, 3D printers, and different types of food fabrication machines, and a human sushi master is there to create food. And if you reserve online, a health test kit will be sent, and if you send it back, a health ID will be created, and if you send it back, there will be a nutrition optimizing machinery that will provide you with the most optimal food. So this is an initiative that we announced at South by Southwest in 2019. And if you actually go to the sushi restaurant, what kind of experience will you go through? We created this user experience video and disseminated it. This gentleman has a health ID, so he goes into the restaurant, and facial recognition. The personal information is provided to the restaurant, and a recommended menu will be offered. And if you place an order, the fabrication machines behind the sushi master will create the most delicious and most fit sushi of the preferred texture and preferred flavor and the optimal nutritional value to this person. And the sushi master will put it on a plate and offer you this experience. It's likely an experience that you've never seen before, never tasted before. And the sushi itself, this is not just coming out of my mind. There's this technology, and therefore we could possibly create this kind of sushi in the future. We have scientific evidence, so to speak. We are talking with professors and universities and coming up with these ideas. For example, this is a cell-cultured tuna. A venture company in this field is working together with us, and an architectural engineering expert. We're talking about this negative stiffness honeycomb octopus. Maybe this kind of stiffness cannot be created in real octopus. And this one is in the field of alginate acid coagulation to create, to put dashi soup inside inside a universe. And we created this kind of prototype and brought it to Austin in the United States and released it to the rest of the world. And we received a lot of reaction to this. At the trade show in this year, in 2019, it caught a lot of attention. I'm aware of time, so let me skip the last part of the video. So this is a restaurant that does not only use technology. There are various challenges that the food industry is facing, such as sustainability. By having cell culture capabilities and plant factory inside the restaurant, we will be able to offer sustainable food and reduce food mileage, and also be able to address the individual needs through this technology. And automation will also be introduced. And so this initiative is something that will offer some solutions to the challenges the whole industry is facing. And together with partners, we are moving forward in this initiative, one of which the FDM type of 3D printer used to create sweets. Actually, this is an initiative or project that has been completed. We are able to offer 3D printer sweets called cyber wagashi. And this is the topic that I want to close my presentation with. Cyber wagashi is wagashi, a Japanese sweet that is made of 3D printers. But that's not the end of the story. Wagashi, or Japanese sweet, is a particular culture, traditional culture of Japan, of enjoying the season. How can that be updated using technology? With climate change, the wagashi creators, the timing of creating particular wagashi at what time of the season, it has becoming very difficult. But nowadays, the temperature, wind velocity, and pressure this data is available as part of meteorological data, and that can be used in order to produce this cyber wagashi. That's what this project is all about. Enjoying the change in season by using data. To create one wagashi, it takes 10-15 minutes. And these wagashi are quite beautiful. The wind velocity and pressure defines the height. And the color represents the highest temperature and the lowest temperature towards the bottom. Meteorological data is available for past 100 years, so we will be able to reproduce wagashi of any particular day or time or place in the past 100 years. So this is, and the Environment Ministry also offers meteorological prediction data for the future. At Mori Tower, we were supposed to offer this cyber wagashi in a restaurant, but it has been postponed because of COVID-19. And the food culture that is deeply rooted in Japanese tradition, how could it be created? We are working together with traditional artisans, created tea rooms to offer the experience. OPENMEALS is combining food, technology, and art to continue to create new food culture for the future, not just 3D printing. We're working on various projects in parallel. Future comes out of an idea of one person, and if that brings people together, it will create a new option for the whole society. Let us work together to create the food future.
Sakaki-san, thank you very much. That was amazing. I hope that you can share with us soon. If you were here, I'm sure that you can you can give the panelists some of the foods that you've created. Now I'd like to move on to the third panelist. She's participating from Beirut of Lebanon. She is Ms. Nada Debs, designer. Nada-san, you can speak in Japanese or English. But I understand your presentation is English. Please go ahead.
今ミュートになってるようですね。
I think you're muted. Please unmute.
Okay. So I'll be speaking in English.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you so much for inviting me to this interesting forum. What I'd like to do first is to talk about my journey, about how I ended up to be a furniture designer, and then I'll talk a little bit about the effect of the pandemic. What I thought was very interesting in the last two presentations is that it was all about futuristic things, whereas where we are today, we're a developing nation, and especially Lebanon, we're facing a lot of economic problems, and recently the blast that happened, and so we have a long way to go when it comes to technology. And what's interesting is I'm going to take you back to the past. Here we go. So many years ago, I went to visit Istanbul, and I visited the Topkapi Palace, which is a palace which was the head of the palace for the sultans of the Ottoman Empire. And in one of the rooms, which was rooms of gifts, there were these beautiful gifts that were donated to the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, which were all beautifully handcrafted objects. And this reminded me of the Silk Route and how my family in 1917 went from Damascus to Kobe, Japan. So I grew up in Kobe, but my family went in 1917 through the Silk Route. They reached Shanghai and heard of opportunities in Japan. And now they're working in the textile industry in Japan. So they produce fabric and export to the rest of the world. What's interesting about the Silk Route is that there's always an exchange of ideas and craft. And what I noticed about myself is that as I traveled back to Beirut, my hometown, 20 years ago, so I started in Kobe and then moved to America to study, and then lived in London for my first job, and then arrived to Beirut 20 years ago. I also did some exchange of ideas and of craft and design aesthetics. This is my father. He was in Japan in the 1950s, so he's a second generation who went to Japan. And so Japan, when you look at the history of Japan, it's all about beauty of the simplicity. And when you look at the way, everything is just minimalist and pure, and everything has just, how do you say, form and function. So basically the form is a reflection of the function. So it was very pure.
Hello? Not
Can you
moving
hear
forward.
me?
You're still at the title. So maybe you can, you have to push on your side to, move forward. Yes, now that your father. Yes.
I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
Okay. So here's the Silk Route. I'll just go quickly. And this is my father. And this is Japan, and how Japanese aesthetics is all about the simplicity of joinery. Is it clear now for everybody?
Thank you.
See properly? Okay. This is me as a little child. And you can see that I was very different from everybody else. And how it was so important for me to have a sense of belonging. And so this is the beginning of the journey of finding out who I am by going back to where I came from. I studied at the Rhode Island School of Design. And what was interesting about America, it is a new country. And so what you see is that people looked at the future. So there was the glass industry and the steel industry. And one of the first pieces I made were using different materials and finding a balance of different materials. Then I decided to move to the UK because I felt that I needed a sense of community, people who spoke Arabic, maybe, and who spoke English. And I found that in the UK. And what was interesting about the UK is that instead of looking to the future like America, the UK revered the past. So antique furniture was so important. And when I visited a lot of shops and antique shops, they talked about marquetry and hand carving and the value of craft. So for me, craftsmanship became something that I was very interested in. And so on the left, you see the traditional marquetry technique. And on the right, you see a much more contemporary version that I did for children's furniture. I started that because I was pregnant with my first child, and I wanted to show, some contemporary furniture using traditional craft, but done in a contemporary way. I was still seeking this sense of my roots, and so I decided to move to Lebanon in the year 2000. And this was just after the Civil War. when you can see on the right-hand side, everything was completely broken. And in the year 2000, there was like a reconstruction effort to bring everything back to normal. And one of my first pieces was the floating stool, which was a plexiglass base. And what you put on inside is what makes a difference in terms of materials. So sometimes I would use obi or material or brocade from England. And when you can see the first pieces of furniture, they look quite Japanese because, you know, my mindset was completely influenced by the Japanese aesthetics that I grew up with. But then I decided to find out what is very local in this part of the world. And I went to visit Damascus. And this is what I saw. I saw overly ornamental furniture, beautiful workmanship. But then I felt like today, this isn't what people want. They want something that they can relate to. So I decided to visit some crafts workshops, and I found one in Damascus. And I realized that they were only used to doing a certain way of doing things. So I asked them to do much more simpler things, patterns. And then I applied it in a much more simple, pure way, like I have been used to growing up in Japan. So you can see the evolution of the traditional pieces and how I translated it into more contemporary lines. And here also, like a little bit of Japanese influence, where I use screens, calligraphy, hand carving, and even the parquetry craft that is in Himeji. We also do it in this part of the world, which is very interesting to find a link between the two. So I called my concept East and East, because I felt it was like bringing together the two Easts. And it kind of formed the person who I am today, which is really not just being an Arab, but really somebody that's more globally inspired. I was also inspired by the architecture and the geometry and how the patterns are created out of a circle, which means infinity, God, and eventually when you put it together, these patterns come out. So these are the pieces of furniture that came up, which is completely different from what was known in the region at the time. So I've incorporated hand carving, mother of pearl inlay, parquetry technique, but also doing it in a contemporary way by adding color. Instead of keeping craft traditional and a little sober, I added color and made it fresh, related to the people of today. People wanted to relate to furniture and they wanted to feel a sense of identity, but at the same time feel modernity. So this is resin, steel, metal, concrete. Concrete is something I really love to work with. And this is our studio in Beirut, although it was completely broken and blasted during the August explosion, but we renovated again. And this is where we work with our clients. And we have many, many different techniques in crafts. I've updated the traditional techniques by using new materials and new technology. I just wanted to show a simple example of how I come up with a collection. So today, Japan is all about manga and anime, especially internationally. So I decided to get influenced by this. So you can see the colors and the fact that a lot of the heroines in the manga are women. So this is a bar called Land of the Rising Sun. And you can see that there's this sense of the rising sun with the degradation of the red inside. It's a bar unit. And what I did is I actually took the mother of pearl inlay and we stained it. So this is using Japanese patterns, Middle Eastern craft, and Middle Eastern patterns, all mixed in one. And these are other things kind of working on how we can interpret and find a balance between different cultures. So this is a tatami table where I used the rolls of tatami that I bought from Japan, and I framed it with marquetry from here. We do interior commissions like this restaurant in Paris, residential projects, institutional work. This is the headquarters of the United Arab Emirates in New York. And this is the Arab League, which is like the UN for the Arabs in Cairo. And we've worked on collaborations with carpets in Afghanistan, FRATELLI, ROSSETTI, the heels. We produce the heels for them with CONVERSE. And lastly, we did a collaboration with IKEA for the Middle East. And we did a whole collection of home accessories. What I feel today, with the pandemic, is that we became much, much more aware of our environment. So, and I think the idea of touch and the human hand has become very important. At one point, we weren't allowed to touch our hands and our face, our mouth and our nose. And so feeling with the hand or touching people or hugging, all these things, especially in the Western world, they hug and they kiss. So all this was not allowed. So I think the importance of the hand has become quite relevant. And, because we now stay at home more, what we touch has become more important. And we're also looking for quality, I feel. And people started to look inwards. So as opposed to industry, I felt like people are wanting something that are more soft and tactile, where they can touch and feel, and even feel the energy of the craftsman. I have this example where when you cook for someone you love, the food is very good. And that's because they feel the energy of the person that's cooking. And same with handcraft. I feel that it is when the person is doing the craft, the attention that goes into the work is what we feel. And I think that people have become to feeling and to energy. And I think also the sense of identity has become more important. We question who we are today because we're spending more time with ourselves. And I think that makes us also reflect on who is around us, what is around us. So local craftsmanship, I feel, is very important also. We have a brand manifesto that was developed about 5 years ago, and it talks about the hand and the heart. And I'll just read it briefly. The hand that touches, the heart that creates, the passion of the storyteller, the craft that archives the emotions of nations and civilizations, history in a hand, memory in a craft that tells a story and identity, a hand voice that narrates a human story, a craft that conveys a memory, a craft that conveys a message, a craft that conveys a modern memory to the now we belong, east we are. So basically, I really believe that today, the importance of the human hand and how we actually use our hands to create history, because since sculpture, painting, everything that we have had in the past has been made so far by hand. And I still believe that that's the future as well. Thank you so much.
ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much. So we have heard from the 3 panelists, and we have heard their presentations. We now would like to proceed to discussion time, which I would like to moderate. The first 2 speakers were on fashion, and as an art director, you are engaged in the field of food. Nada-san, you are in the designer field, domain, and you joined us from Lebanon. Interior and craft were, I think, keywords, and you have been engaged in designs of various things. I was looking for a common keyword across all three of you, and this is a question to all the three of you. My impression, listening to the presentations, was that you talked about materials. I think you are challenging materials. You are very much aware of the materials that you're using. And in the meantime, memory. In various respects, I think memory also emerged in your presentations. In the case of Nakazato-san, you talked about the memory of garments, memory of shirts, haute couture, online. People's memories are being transpired into shirts. And Sakaki-san, when you talked about creating food data, but data that's also memory, a digitalized memory, we might be able to say in that way. And deep inside is culture, a culinary culture, and taste or texture is being transpired in terms of food, and that's what makes digitalization of food possible. And of course, memory. Nada-san, when we talk about memory, in your context, you've gone through different cultures, different countries, and the memory of the place where your work is produced, that's also reflected, I think, in your creative activities. And another point is movement. It could be the movement of the clothes, the garment, and it could be the movement of food. You talked about food teleportation, but it's not just a teleportation, but 3D printers will be creating particular movement from nothing. That's the movement that Sakaki-san talked about. And in Nada-san, you talked about tactile being important. And that's also where movement is involved. You move and you feel and you sense something. Another keyword is, I think, module or modular. The Islamic or Arabic patterns is modular. And in Sakaki-san's case, the modular parts is transformed into sushi. And also digitalized materials are being analyzed to create a modular movement of clothes. So materials, memory, movement, and module. And then underlining is culture. And the future is coming. Sakaki-san talked about the future approaching us, coming to us. You talked about challenging in order to create something from zero. And when we think of the future coming to us, these are the keywords which I hope that we can speak with you. Nakazato-san, if you could share with us what you think about the future and about the presentations. I was listening to all the presentations with great interest. And I want to actually ask a question. Sakaki-san, your sushi, I thought that was really inspiring. It was very interesting. And you also talked about automation. Automation was the key. I am trying to automate haute couture, order-made clothes, and I thought there was a common thread between you and me. But when it comes to a sense of satisfaction, fulfilling the five senses and connecting with healthcare and controlling that five senses and automatically creating that through digital, I was questioning whether we will be really satisfied by that, because emotional aspect is very important for clothing as well. And if you automate and try to simplify the process, that's one way that we want to achieve. But the next question is whether we will be able to be really satisfied with something that is created through such a rational process. So what do you think about that? Thank you for asking me the question. Well, true. Creating data and making teleportation possible. Some people say to me that it sounds cold. I can't feel the warmness of it. But everything that is new tend to be antagonized. But gradually, at the end of the day, it could become commonplace, and people will start to accept it. And 3D printers, a technology that we have today, personalize it and nutrition level being optimized. It's like onigiri, compared to onigiri that is made by human hand. It lacks that love, affection, and warmth that people are looking for. But the dot cube technology that I talked about, there's a format, and people will be able to cook online. And what is cooked online, that person will put a lot of affection into that programming, and if that is shared and somebody will eat it by giving further input, saying that they want to improve it, so people will come with different ideas and trying to improve using 3D printer technology. We might be able to reproduce the sense, the taste, the preference of each person. It will be reflected in the data that will be fed into that food, and if that could be shared across the world, then it could create a new context, new story to that data. And so handmade data, the handmade food, it might create an atmosphere that is quite similar to handmade food, but it would require more advancement in technology. It would come hand in hand.
Thank you very much. There could be some resistance in the beginning, but that is always the case when something new is born. But I think people will become used to it. And over time, I'm sure a new culture, a new history will emerge. It makes sense. Thank you. I also have I have a question for Nada-san. Can I speak in Japanese? Oh, there's also interpretation. Now, craftsmanship is very important. Traditional craftsmanship is being utilized. I think the way you use the tatami material was outstanding. When I create clothes, traditional technology will sometimes be lost because of the changing values, and there could be no successor to craftsmanship. And we are afraid that this art will be lost. How can you transfer this to future generations? Is there something that you're doing to make sure craftsmanship will live on to the future?
To me, there are many things that I can do with CNC machines, but I actually choose not to, because I feel that, first of all, I think it's very inherent in us human beings that we need to keep using our hands and our bodies. And so I try as hard not to use technology that can replace the hand. Maybe we can use technology in a different way, so that not something that replaces the hand. I think we cannot, stop using our bodies, and I think that this is where we were talking about movement. I think it's very important that we keep movement, and so I would try to use technology in other ways. in doing drawings like the fashion designer had done before, or in the food, where you can use technology to create imagery, but the actual finished product, I feel, needs to have that handcraft. And it also gives meaning to human beings today, I think, when there is a use for the hand. I just worry, like, if we go back in evolution, like a lot of animals have lost the use of their hands, and I wonder if that would be the future for us if we continue focusing on machine work, replacing the hand.
ありがとうございます。
それでは
Sakaki-san, I have a question for you in terms of material, all the points that I mentioned earlier. Can you comment on what I have laid down? Thank you very much. Material and memory. To these points, I would like to emphasize digitalization. Memories and materials can excel and go beyond the existing experience. In terms of the 3D printer, for example, printer is not just reproducing, but at the nano level, printing is also enabled. Then we would be able to taste something that human beings have never experienced. Functions and taste could be developed anew. For example, it's going to be very technical. Now, you can have a very thin layer using a printer, and you can have water on top, and then have another layer, and you can do this on a nano level. Then you can reproduce a fresh vegetable, like a salad even. So the vegetable feeling is only for that vegetable, but you can combine tastes and different textures, and health data can also be incorporated. When I want to have delicious food, I purposely not eat too much on the previous day so that I can truly enjoy the meal. So I have a inner standard on how I can enjoy food. And using data, the taste bud as well as brain sensation can be optimized. That can be visualized. So if you want to have an optimal meal, you should maintain a certain level of body status. So it's not just the time of the meal, but you can prepare to have a wonderful meal. And that will go beyond the past memory. I think this is a world that we can envision for the future.
Nanjo-san, yes, I wanted to ask this question. No one actually talked about the pandemic, and then we are in a time when we need social distancing. Home delivery of food has become very popular, and you can offer an ultimate delivery experience without meeting anyone. Just staying home, you will be able to receive food that you want. And thinking about this, under this current situation, having this technology, being able to analyze the taste of food and be able to teleport that or send to others, what kind of significance, meaning do you think that that your idea has, especially with COVID-19? Well, food is digitalized and offered to someone, and I think it would develop in 3 phases. The first phase is personalization. Food is digitalized to be matched with that person's body. That's the first phase of digitalization and value of data, and this already is occurring. because companies are already offering the personalization phase. And the next phase is the teleportation of food, of exchanging food in terms of data. And when we come to that phase, we no longer have that social challenge of people eating in isolation. So new revolution in food will emerge. And beyond that, and I'm thinking that this will come up in 2040 and beyond, this is the reproducing of food. And teleportation and reproducing of food is completely different. In other words, what your mother has cooked you could be scanned on that moment, and to be able to send that to a different time requires a completely new technology. And if this reproduction of food becomes really possible, for example, food of your grandmother could be enjoyed in 10,000 years. In other words, it's not just distance, but it can be offered beyond time. Or a 3-star chef. Instead of having brick and mortar type of stores, they can have online restaurants and have a set of printers and cartridges that can offer the same taste of that restaurant. The food ecosystem, the whole ecosystem around food might be transformed completely. Did that answer your question? What, that was not your question? Well, as a matter of fact, today, and Najo-san is going to probably ask again, but with COVID-19, as was asked in Najo-san's question, with COVID-19 or in a post-COVID-19 world, what kind of change are we going to see? That is the big question. Najo-san is repeatedly pushing this question because we want to hear specifically what kind of change are we going to see. For example, the food teleportation, that was quite specific. People will be able to enjoy food without seeing one another. But in your daily activities, in a post-COVID-19 world, including business and including the creative process, what ideas do you have as to how things will specifically change with COVID-19? That's actually the main theme of the session. And we only have about 2 minutes left for the session, so if we could ask a word from each one of you, and we can continue the discussion in the after session, if we may. So starting with Nakazato-san. Well, yes, we're staying at home, but the concept of home, I think, has changed. Our concept of place is changing as well. And what are we going to wear? That's the perspective that I always try to have. But when we think of relax wear, at what we wear at home, relax was very important. But the home could become a workplace. It's not just a relaxing environment. And what we wear at home, homeware, the definition of homeware, I think will change over time. The home could become a place of hobby, a place of work, a place to relax. So the same clothes, if that could change depending on what you are doing at home, that's the kind of change I think we can envision going forward. Nada-san, may I ask this question? We only have 1 minute left, so if we have a word or two from you.
For me, I think the most important thing is that as human beings, even if we're at home, that we're connecting with others. And I think so creating an environment where actually the computer is really in front of us all the time, I think that will connect us to other people. Hence, what we design around the workspace, or maybe all the spaces, have to incorporate some kind of digital, computers or material where we can actually And so maybe that is the future where we have to incorporate digital objects, cameras all the time so that we're constantly connecting.
Thank you.
Sakaki-san, I'm sorry, but we only have a few seconds left, so if we could continue our discussion in the after session. So today, we have those of you who have joined, who are going to join us in the after session, please contact to the URL, and we will be starting our after session from 8:20. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope to see you in the after session. Thank you.